Think of France. What comes to mind? Liberty, revolution, the rights of man? Maybe it's champagne, the Louvre, or that certain joie de vivre. France is a nation practically synonymous with romance, high culture, and fierce independence. But what if I told you the modern French state has more in common with the old Soviet Union than the free market democracies it's supposed to look like? This isn't a scene from some dystopian film. It's Paris, where mountains of garbage pile up on historic boulevards, a striking symbol of national paralysis. This isn't a story about ideology, gulags, or grand military parades. It's about something deeper, the very structure of the state. It's in how the government controls the economy, in the immense power of its bureaucracy, and in the fundamental relationship between the citizen and the state. What if a major European power was still running on a Soviet-style playbook? We're going to show how France's state-controlled economy, its elite ruling class, and a series of disastrous policies have created a system eerily similar to the USSR, leading it down a path of deindustrialization and stagnation. The story of modern France is the story of a gilded cage, a beautiful prison of its own making. And to understand it, you have to look past the croissants and the couture, and into the hidden machinery of the French state. On the surface, France looks like the pinnacle of Western civilization. It has universal healthcare, breathtaking infrastructure, and a cultural influence that punches way above its weight. Its citizens enjoy a high quality of life and long life expectancies. And its luxury brands, LVMH, Kering, Hermès, dominate the globe as symbols of ultimate desirability. Paris is still one of the world's most visited cities, a magnet for tourists and dreamers alike. But underneath this shimmering veneer lies a deep and persistent sickness. A creeping paralysis that decades of leaders have failed to cure. Let's look at the numbers. France's public debt is a behemoth, projected to climb towards 120% of GDP by 2027. For context, the European Union's official limit is 60%. This isn't just a number on a spreadsheet, it's a gradual suffocation of the economy, where more and more taxpayer money goes to paying interest instead of funding schools or hospitals. Then there's the problem of work. Or lack of it. For decades, France has been plagued by chronic unemployment. While there have been improvements, the unemployment rate is expected to rise, potentially reaching 7.8% or higher in 2026, which is significantly above the average for the Eurozone. The situation for young people is even more dire. Youth unemployment has been a persistent crisis, with rates recently peaking between 17% and 19%, trapping a generation in a cycle of precariousness and dependency. And while the world buys French luxury, France itself is making less and less. The country has gone through one of the most severe processes of deindustrialization in the developed world. In the 1970s, manufacturing made up nearly a quarter of all jobs. Today, that figure has plummeted to around 10%. France's industrial output was once more than half of Germany's. Today, it has fallen to about 40% of its neighbors. This isn't just a shift to a service economy, it's the hollowing out of the country's productive core, creating French deserts, entire regions left behind with high unemployment and fraying social fabric. So you have this paradox. A country that seems to have it all, yet is weighed down by suffocating debt, an inability to create enough jobs, and a shrinking industrial base. It's a nation that spends lavishly on a welfare state it can no longer afford, funded by an ever-shrinking productive economy. This is the French disease, a system so rigid, so resistant to change, that it's slowly grinding to a halt. To understand where this came from, we need to go back in time, to the foundation of the modern French state. It's there we find the ghost of an old idea, the blueprint for France's Soviet-style playbook, dirigisme. The idea that the state should be the main driver of the economy isn't some modern French quirk. Its roots run deep, all the way back to the 17th century and a man named Jean-Baptiste Colbert, the finance minister to the Sun King, Louis XIV. Colbert believed in a powerful, centralized state that directed industry and controlled trade to enrich the kingdom. This philosophy of statism never really left the French psyche. But its modern form, the one that defines France today, was forged in the ashes of World War II. The country was in ruins. Into this vacuum stepped a towering figure, Charles de Gaulle. De Gaulle and his planners looked at the world and saw two models they found equally unappealing: the freewheeling, often chaotic capitalism of the United States, and the totalitarian central planning of the Soviet Union. They chose a third way. A middle path they called dirigisme, from the French verb diriger, meaning to direct. Dirigisme isn't Soviet communism, private property and markets still exist. But it's a system where the state isn't just a referee, it's the star player, coach, and league commissioner, all at once. The goal was to rebuild and modernize France at lightning speed, with the state as the engine. To do this, they created the General Planning Commission, an agency staffed by elite civil servants who would draw up blueprints for the entire national economy. And the state didn't just suggest, it acted. It nationalized key sectors: electricity, EDF, railways, SNCF, aviation, Air France, and major banks. This gave the government direct control over the economy's commanding heights. It used subsidies to funnel cash to favored industries and engineered national champions, huge industrial conglomerates designed to compete globally. The state's hand was everywhere, guiding and shaping the market. And for a while, it was a spectacular success. The period from 1945 to 1975 is known in France as the Trente Glorieuses, the 30 Glorious Years. The French economy grew at an astonishing 5% per year, transforming the country into a modern industrial power. The Trente Glorieuses did more than just build factories, it forged a national consensus. It embedded a deep-seated belief that the state should be the ultimate guarantor of prosperity and security. The citizens accepted high taxes and state control, and in return, the state provided jobs, welfare, and a constantly improving quality of life. This was the golden age of French Dirigisme. It was sold as a pragmatic solution, but its structure mirrored the logic of a command economy. It was built on the idea that a small group of brilliant planners in Paris knew better than the market. This success, however, planted the seeds of its own destruction and, most critically, created a new class of ruler to oversee it all. A class that looked remarkably like the Soviet Union's own permanent elite, the nomenklatura. In the Soviet Union, the nomenklatura was the list of key positions in the government and industry, and the list of people loyal enough to fill them. They were the apparatchiks, a self-perpetuating elite that ran the country. France, in its own way, created a parallel system. To staff its massive state apparatus, France needed a special kind of civil servant. In 1945, the same year the Planning Commission was born, Charles de Gaulle created the École Nationale d'Administration, or ENA. Its mission was supposed to be noble, to democratize access to the top jobs in government. But ENA morphed into something else entirely. It became the finishing school for France's ruling class. Admission was brutally competitive, a system that heavily favored the children of the wealthy and well-connected. It is important to note that ENA was officially dissolved in 2022 and reformed into a new school, the Inspector, with a stated goal of improving diversity. But for over 70 years, ENA was the system, and by its later years, the number of students from working-class backgrounds had plummeted. Upon graduation, the top-ranked students, the énarques, were given their pick of the most powerful jobs in the French state. But here is where the French nomenklatura truly reveals itself. After a few years in government, many énarques perform a maneuver known as pantouflage, literally putting on slippers. They seamlessly transition from top regulator to a C-suite job in one of the very corporations they were just overseeing. Then, after a lucrative stint in the private sector, they often cycle back into an even more powerful government position. This creates a breathtakingly influential closed loop of power. Look at the top of French society, and you'll see them everywhere. 3 of the last 4 presidents before the school's reform, Jacques Chirac, François Hollande, and Emmanuel Macron himself, were all énarques. So were countless prime ministers and CEOs of France's largest companies. This isn't a conspiracy, it's the system working as designed. It created a technocratic ruling class that shares the same education, the same worldview, and the same assumptions about the role of the state. Their power doesn't come from a party card, as in the USSR, but from a diploma. They are the high priests of the French state religion, incapable of questioning its central dogmas. And in 1981, this nomenklatura would oversee the most radical and disastrous economic experiment in modern French history. By the late 1970s, the Trente Glorieuses were a memory. The 1973 oil crisis had slowed growth, and unemployment was rising. The public was hungry for change. In 1981, they got it. François Mitterrand was elected the first socialist president of the Fifth Republic. He didn't just promise to tinker with the system, he promised a rupture with capitalism. His platform was the logical endpoint of decades of dirigism. And he wasted no time. Mitterrand's government unleashed a blitz of statist policies. The centerpiece was a massive wave of nationalizations, even bigger than de Gaulle's. Within a year, the state had seized 12 of France's largest industrial groups and 36 banks, effectively placing the entire credit system under government command. This was dirigisme on steroids. The state now controlled a vast empire, and the government believed it could use this power to plan the economy and conquer unemployment. At the same time, they unleashed a torrent of public spending, a higher minimum wage, more welfare benefits, retirement at 60, and a fifth week of paid vacation. For the French left, it was euphoria. For the economy, it was an unmitigated catastrophe. The reaction was immediate and brutal. The anti-business rhetoric triggered massive capital flight. The Paris stock market plunged. Inflation spiraled. The government spending blew a gigantic hole in the budget. Mitterrand's attempt to defy global economic gravity failed spectacularly. While other Western countries were moving towards deregulation, France was marching in the opposite direction. The French franc was devalued 3 times in less than 2 years. By 1983, the dream was over. France was on the brink of economic collapse. Faced with reality, Mitterrand performed a stunning U-turn, known as the tournant de la rigueur, or the austerity turn. The socialist experiment was abandoned. The radical dream of a full-blown command economy within a capitalist world was dead. But here's the crucial part: the failure of the experiment did not lead to a fundamental rethinking of the French model. The core structures remained. The state remained enormous. And the nomenklatura, the anarchs who had overseen both the nationalizations and the reversal, remained firmly in control. The ideology had taken a hit, but the system itself survived, ready to produce the next great, centrally planned, and economically disastrous idea. It wouldn't have to wait long. And that next idea was arguably the single most damaging economic policy in modern French history, a policy that perfectly encapsulates this top-down thinking. But before we get to that, if you're finding this look into the hidden machinery of France illuminating, take a moment to subscribe. We explore topics like this every week. Okay, let's talk about the 35-hour work week. In the late 1990s, with unemployment over 11%, the socialist government of Lionel Jospin decided to tackle the problem with a solution of breathtaking naivety, a policy rooted in a 19th century fallacy known as the lump of labor. This is the idea that there's a fixed amount of work, a lump, to be done in an economy. So, if you want more people to have jobs, you just have each person work a little less. The work can then be shared. Economists have been debunking this for over a century, but for the French nomenklatura, insulated from market logic, the theory was irresistible. And so, between 1998 and 2002, the government mandated a reduction in the standard workweek from 39 to 35 hours. The slogan was seductive: work less, so everyone can work. Unions added their own spin: 35 hours paid 39, meaning monthly salaries should stay the same despite working 4 fewer hours. In reality, it was an economic bomb. First, it massively increased labor costs. An employee working 35 hours but paid for 39 has a much higher effective hourly wage. This made French labor, already expensive, even less competitive. Second, instead of hiring more people, many companies did everything they could to avoid it, relying on overtime and demanding more flexibility from existing staff. Some studies even found that firms that adopted the 35-hour week saw their productivity drop. Third, what about jobs? The government at the time claimed it created 350,000 jobs. The reality is more complicated. While some studies suggest a modest, short-term bump in hiring, most economists agree this was largely due to a strong global economy at the time, not the law itself. The net effect was likely minimal, and it came at an astronomical cost. Fourth, to prevent the whole thing from imploding, the government had to offer massive subsidies to companies, costing the state tens of billions of euros annually in the early years. Essentially, taxpayers were funding a policy that wasn't working. The 35-hour week is the ultimate example of the French Soviet mindset. It was a purely ideological, top-down decree that ignored basic economics. It assumed a handful of planners in Paris could redesign the labor market for an entire nation. Though later reforms have added flexibility, the 35-hour week remains the legal standard, a permanent drag on French competitiveness and a symbol of the state's belief in its own omniscience. This policy, combined with the underlying philosophy of dirigisme, has had one final, devastating consequence: the slow-motion collapse of French industry. Imagine 2 factories in the 1970s. One in Germany, one in France. The German factory operates in a market-oriented system. It has to be efficient and innovative to survive. The French factory is a national champion, shielded from competition by the state. Its primary goal isn't profit, but maintaining employment. Its costs are high and its rules are rigid. As globalization kicks in, their fates diverge. The German factory adapts and becomes a world leader. The French factory, burdened by high costs, becomes uncompetitive. The state keeps it alive with subsidies, but eventually, the losses are too great. The factory closes. The jobs disappear. Multiply this story across thousands of companies, and you have the story of French deindustrialization. It is the inevitable endgame of this state-led model. Now, many Western countries experience deindustrialization, but in France, the state's own policies seem to put a foot on the accelerator. The very system designed to create national champions ended up creating national invalids. By shielding firms from competition, Dirigisme removed the incentive to innovate. Policies like the 35-hour week just layered on more costs, making it increasingly unattractive to build things in France. The results have been catastrophic. France has lost millions of industrial jobs since the 1970s. Entire regions have been hollowed out, creating deep political resentments that fuel extremist parties. The decline of industry has left France with a dangerously unbalanced economy, overly reliant on public spending, tourism, and a few luxury brands. The state, which was supposed to be the engine of growth, has become a bloated behemoth, consuming an ever larger share of the national wealth while the productive base that pays for it all continues to shrink. This is the state of France today, a country trapped by its own history, paralyzed by a system designed for a world that no longer exists. A system run by an elite nomenclatura that cannot reform the source of its own power, and that responds to every problem with the same tired solution: more state intervention, more regulations, more public spending. So, is France truly the last Soviet Union in Europe? Of course, the comparison isn't about political freedom or ideology. France is a vibrant democracy. The parallel is structural. It's in a shared economic DNA. It's in the deep-seated belief in a powerful, centralized state that must direct the economy, dirigisme. It's in the existence of a permanent ruling class, the anarchs, who, like the Soviet nomenclatura, cycle between the highest positions of state power and industry. It's in the tendency to launch grand, top-down plans, like the 35-hour work week, that defy market logic. And it's in the final result, the slow hollowing out of the country's productive capacity, stubborn unemployment, and a bloated state that consumes more than the economy can sustain. This is why real reform in France seems impossible. Every attempt is met with ferocious resistance, not just from powerful unions, but from a public condition for generations to see the state as its ultimate protector. We've seen it with the Gilets jaunes, yellow vests, and the massive demonstrations against pension reforms. Any leader who tries to trim the welfare state is immediately accused of betraying the sacred French model and is met with chaos. The nomenclatura is too entrenched to reform itself. The public is too fearful of change. The political system is too paralyzed to act. France now stands at a crossroads, caught between a past it can't let go of and a future it's terrified to embrace. Can the land of revolution reinvent itself one more time? Or is it destined to become a living museum, a beautiful but stagnant relic of a bygone era? The uncomfortable truth may be that France's greatest enemy is no longer a foreign power, but the very system it created to ensure its glory, a system that has become the blueprint for its own slow, elegant decline. What do you think is the future of the French model? Is there a way out of this trap? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And for more deep dives that challenge the way you see the world, make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching.